Typical Rosie, I thought. Nasty as always. But then, a really weird thing happened. Mum came out of Truckingham Palace with Mrs. Taylor, who was telling her all about her shoe collection. As soon as Rosie saw my mum, she suddenly switched to being sweet and nice again. "Oh, Mrs. Garstang," she said, "it's totes amaze-tastic we're going to be going on holiday with you." Mum smiled. "Aw, isn't she lovely, Roman?" I was going to say she's about as lovely as a punch in the throat, but I didn't have time, because right then there was a loud kaboom! The ground shook and a huge ball of fire burst through the window of our caravan, sending shattered glass across the street. "Gamble!" I cried. "My caravan!" screamed Mum. We watched sadly as the fire engine trundled away down the street a bit later on. They'd managed to put out the fire quite quickly, but the caravan was wrecked. The kitchen was half melted, most of the windows had been blown out by the explosion, and all of the walls and carpets were ruined. Gamble's face was black from the smoke, and his eyebrows and eyelashes had been burnt off. This made him look even weirder than normal. But although he'd been right next to the explosion, he wasn't hurt. This kid was completely indestructible. He's like one of those cockroaches that can survive a nuclear bomb. "You know, I can't help but think it was a tiny bit my fault," he sniffed, stroking Scratchy the dog. The dog, by the way, was also fine, although most of its hair had been singed off itself. It was all pink and stringy, like a piece of spaghetti with legs. "A tiny bit your fault," I said. "It was totally your fault." Gamble looked hurt. "I was trying to put the fireworks somewhere safe." "Then why did you put them in the oven, Darren?" I asked. "Well, no one would look in there." I considered this for a moment. "Fair enough, but that doesn't explain why you turned the oven on full blast." "I thought it would keep 'em warm," he offered, wiping some of the soot from his face. I put my head in my hands. This kid was beyond belief. At that moment, Mum came out of the caravan sobbing. "Now where are we going to stay?" Mr. Taylor followed her out. Could have been worse. He could have blown up Truckingham Palace. This didn't make Mum feel any better. She slowly turned to look at Rosie's dad. "Talking of the motorhome, how many people can sleep in it?" I realised here what she was going to suggest. This was awful. I'd rather walk the 400 miles to the wedding and sleep in the middle lane of a motorway than spend 3 nights cooped up with Rosie Taylor. For once, Rosie actually saved the day. "I'm so sorry-licious, Mrs. Garstang," she said. "It'd be, super cool to stay with you, but the spare room is like jam-packed with my clothes. Plus we don't have enough seatbelts, and we'd hate for Roman to get hurt if we had an accident." This wasn't true, by the way. Rosie loves it when I get hurt. One time at school, we had to write about our favourite memory. She wrote about when we went to the zoo in year 1 and I got trampled on by a herd of camels. "Oh, I totally understand," said Mum, "but we can't go to the wedding without somewhere to sleep." Rosie dragged me to the side. Once she was away from Mum, she was back to normal. "I've tried to be nice and it hasn't worked. Tell your mad old mother to pull herself together. I'm going to have a fofo if we don't get moving soon." "Fofo?" I asked. "A full-on freak out," tutted Rosie, "like when that American actress Lola Gunn shaved her head and attacked those girl guides with a tennis racket." Why was she being so nice to my mum's face and then being so horrible behind her back? It didn't make any sense, but this was Rosie. There had to be a reason. "I'll make it up to you, Mrs. Roman's mum," said Gamble. "Give us your phone. I'll call Uncle Terry." 10 minutes later, Mum, Dad, Gamble and I were standing with Gamble's Uncle Terry inside a new caravan. Well, I say new. It was actually about 50 years old and smelt like a mixture of sour milk and rotten meat. The curtains were brown and tatty, the windows were green and cracked, and there was a sticker on the gas fire that said, "Do not use, danger of death." It was also tiny. A pokey lounge kitchen, a toilet room the size of a shoebox, and, well, nothing else. "What do you think?" asked Uncle Terry. I'd met Uncle Terry once before when he kidnapped me while robbing our local shop. Since then, he'd been in prison. According to Gamble, when Uncle Terry got out of jail last week, he decided to give up his life of crime. He now had a business renting out his holiday caravan. We'd all thought that this was a stroke of luck, until we'd seen the caravan, that is. "We'll take it," announced Gamble. Dad frowned. "It's a bit cramped and... hang on, is that a bloodstain on the carpet?" Uncle Terry rubbed the red mark with his foot, which made the whole caravan bounce around. "I'm pretty sure it's not human blood." "All right," said Dad, not convinced. "What is it from, then?" "A rat?" suggested Uncle Terry. Not really what my dad wanted to hear. "What about the hole in the roof?" asked Dad. I looked up. There was a gap about the size of a person's head that you could see the sky through. "It's, free air conditioning," smiled Uncle Terry. "And what if it rains?" I asked. He raised a finger. "I'll throw in a free bucket and a couple of half-price rain jackets." Mum was in the kitchen area, peering inside the water tank. "There's a dead hedgehog floating about in here." "See it as a big spiky ice cube," grinned Uncle Terry. Mum and Dad were not impressed. Uncle Terry held up his hands. "Joke, I'll get rid of the hedgehog, and I'll look after Scratchy for our Darren so it can't mess the place up." I almost laughed. I mean, how could anything mess up this heap of crud? Smiling kindly, Mum said, "Thanks for showing it to us, but I don't think so. What would the Taylors think?" "Well," said Uncle Terry, rubbing the back of his neck, "he's a massive, scary-looking man built like a polar bear. I've already unhooked it, from my van, and I've put your number plate on the back, so you've got to take it, really." Dad gulped. "But..." "You can't break a deal," said Uncle Terry, cracking his knuckles. "Uncle Terry once set fire to someone who broke off a deal," said Gamble unhelpfully. "That's not true," said Uncle Terry, wagging a finger at Gamble. "I put him in a petrol-soaked sack and threatened to set fire to him. He changed his mind before I'd even struck the match. There's a big difference there." Mum and Dad shuffled backwards. Rosie's dad poked his head round the door. When he saw the inside of the caravan, his face screwed up in disgust. "We need to get moving, people. Rosie needs time to get ready when we arrive." "Get ready for what?" I began, but Rosie interrupted by knocking on the filthy front window. "Please, can we, go?" Mum and Dad glanced at each other. "Tell you what," said Uncle Terry, sounding friendly again. "You can borrow this caravan for free while I fix yours up. Wherever you are in the country, I'll bring it to you tomorrow morning and we'll swap. I promise." "Still no," said Mum. Dad squinted at him. "Free, you say?" Dad loves a freebie. "Do I look like a liar?" said Uncle Terry. Yes, I thought. Yes, you do. But I wasn't about to say that to him, was I? I quite like being alive. "Only for one night," said Dad to Mum. Mum huffed out her cheeks and walked out.